Nathan Tabor, who is the beast on the river?
The beast on the East River is the United Nations. Of course, they're located in New York. And I think when you really look at their agenda, you will see a very clear and defined plan of how they want to implement the New World Order.
What is that plan, in your opinion?
I think there's three basic steps to that. One is taxing authority, two is court authority, and three is military authority. And I think when you read The Beast on the East River, you'll see how they're implementing this, what's being done, how a lot of the U.S. politicians are signing on with this program, and the number one key to this is education. When you look at what we're teaching our kids in the beginning in preschool to first, second, third grade and on up, we're teaching them to think about this global community and be part of it. We've stopped teaching the Constitution in schools. We've stopped teaching the Bill of Rights. We've stopped, teaching that America was founded as a Christian nation. Now we're starting to teach them that, you need to be part of this one world order.
How do we become, or we have any choice of being a global economy and still get across what you're trying to do?
Well, yes, certainly we have to be part of the global community, but at the same time you still have to protect the sovereignty of the United States, because we as a country have to make sure that, our families and our companies and ultimately our country is being protected. Now, if you want to have a debate and try to ratify the Constitution, take the military, for example. Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution says that the Commander-in-Chief, the President, is supposed to be over all the Army and the Navy. But we have U.S. men and women around the world today under control of UN generals. Well, that's subverting the Constitution, so we either need to vote to allow that to happen or remove our soldiers from underneath the control of the UN generals.
Is there any way, besides the UN, that countries can get together to try to solve international military problems if the UN didn't exist?
Oh, well, certainly. When you look back to 1945 and study, the UN and how it was set up, the original intent was to be to stop human rights violations, to have a round table for people to discuss world issues. But what has happened is kind of like a Trojan horse effect. The United Nations got put into place, the doors opened up, and their true agenda has come out.
What do you think about John Bolton no longer at the UN?
I think that's a great loss to the American people. John Bolton really understands the Constitution. He really understands the world atmosphere and what's taking place, and we removed him from that, and I'm not sure who we're going to replace him with. Is it going to be somebody who believes in the sovereignty of the U.S., or is it going to be somebody who believes that the UN should have taxing authority?
Let's go to your point about the human rights area and what is the role of the United Nations and how should it change? What do you think of the Human Rights Commission at the UN?
Yeah, it's a good concept, protect people from world hunger, world poverty. But when you look at the actual record of the UN, the oil for food scandals and how that was handled, then you look at Rwanda, and then you look at Darfur today, the United Nations is not a complete human rights organization. They're only concerned about the human rights when it's beneficial for them.
What about the inside politics of the UN? People talk about it all the time. How do you see it being run?
Well, that's what happens when you put someone in control like that. Then there's really no way to control what's taking place. Power and money and greed quickly put someone in a position, especially on a 10-year term, like the Secretary is put into. You get people that really have nobody to answer to. And if you did that as the President of the United States had that type of control, or what we see happening with Hugo Chavez or Saddam Hussein or Fidel Castro, then you see what happens to the countries. It becomes a dictatorship.
Do you have any faith in the new UN Secretary?
He's saying good things, he's saying the right words, but I don't see any actions of really trying to completely reform the UN and make it back to what it originally was supposed to be, stopping human rights violations and protecting the sovereignty of all states.
Is this your first book?
This is my first book.
What was the experience like?
It's incredible, dealing with the process, going through the editorial boards and the pub boards and the marketing, and it's interesting. The hardest part with this book has been is an education level. When you say to someone, do you know that the United Nations controls the Statue of Liberty? And they look at me like I have a tinfoil hat on and black helicopters. But the 1972 treaty, when you go to Google and search World Heritage Sites, it says right there, World Heritage Sites belong to all the peoples of the world, irrespective of the territory on which they are located. The Grand Canyon, the Great Smoky Mountains are in this World Heritage Site. What's interesting is it only takes the President of the United States, no vote of Congress, to put things into a World Heritage Site.
Now, that had been talked about a lot for some time, that whole issue of the UN control over national lands. It's not being talked about as much today, it seems.
Yeah, and I think that would be part, why is the national media not covering this? And I think if you look at eminent domain and the Kelo decisions, this is all part for the UN to control. They have to control property. And when you look back at what they've said in the NATO and some of the conventions, when they've said that private ownership of land is a problem to the government, and then you start seeing, where they're controlling these World Heritage Sites, eminent domain, Kelo decisions, you quickly understand, well, they don't want people to know about this. They don't want them to really know what's going on, because then if they do, they will be up in arms or marching on Washington saying, you must change these situations, what's going on.
What's your day job?
I run a media company, but I try to spend the most time with my wife and my little baby girl.
And what in your media company, where can people listen to you?
Yes, I run a site called theconservativevoice.com. I'm also the director of internet outreach for Duncan Hunter for president. I run a few governors' campaigns. Basically what we do is we go in, we build their website, and we build the online strategy. It's not the field of dreams. Just because you build the website doesn't mean they'll come. You actually have to have a really good online strategy of how to get people to your site.
You ran yourself?
I ran myself. I ran in 2004 for Congress, the age of 29, in North Carolina, the 5th District. The age of 29, raised about $750,000. Had a good base of support. Just, I look too young. I'm 33 years old now, and I still look 21.
Who did you lose to?
Virginia Fox.
So what next? Do you have another book in you?
I'm actually talking with Thomas Nelson right now about another book about Christians and politics. When you look on the national scene today, there's no moral majority, there's no Christian coalition, there's good entities out there, the Dobsons and D. James Kennedys and folks like that, but on a broad base for Christian conservatives, there's really no direction in America today. And I think you even see that in a presidential campaign right now, who and what and how are candidates across the board going to mobilize Christian conservatives to the polls in 2008.
This is his first book. Nathan Taylor is our guest, The Beast of the East River. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.